Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with the love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? Hello? Hello?
We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo News. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi.
Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, conservation, and general animal weirdness. So, y'all, it has been a pretty nice week. I've had a good time, kind of a lot of relaxing and doing stuff around the house because, like I said, I'm home, so I'm not traveling for a bit. ... Except, of course, I've already, in the week that I've been home, spent one night in a hotel. And that is because I went to the Cleveland Metro Parks Zoo for a couple of reasons, actually. And my mom has this expression that she likes to use where she says, in this world of weird, whenever she's going to tell me a story that just involves kind of coincidences and stuff like that. And this is one of those in this world of weird stories. So, I went to Cleveland for a couple of reasons. I was there to do an interview with Dr. Diana Kester, who is incredible and is part of the Tree Kangaroo SSP and Safe Tree Kangaroo. And she's a person that you're just gonna love. I'm excited to introduce y'all to her in a couple of weeks. But along with that, I was also planning on pitching the red panda keepers at the zoo to try to get them to agree to join Safe Red Panda as an institutional partner. So this, by the way, I was going for those very super altruistic reasons and not because there is a juvenile tree kangaroo there named Renbo that I was hoping to meet, and also a baby red panda that I was hoping to meet. That has absolutely nothing to do with the trip that I took, even though that did work out for me. So I went and I did my interview with Diana, and it was awesome. And then I was off to meet up with one of the red panda keepers at the zoo. And the day before I arrived, I discovered that the red panda keeper I would be meeting with was Sarah Torpy. That is Jen Torpy's sister. And if you don't know who Jen is, Jen works at the Pittsburgh Zoo. But more importantly, Jen is the co-leader of the public engagement working group of Safe Red Panda with me. So we have worked a ton together, and I was getting to meet her sister. So we talked and hung out, and we met a bunch. Actually, Sarah's awesome. I met a bunch of her animals, not just the pandas, but also tufted deer and bison and cranes. It was a really good day. Very cool person. And it felt like we knew each other because we know each other through Jen, so that was cool. And then, of course, throughout all of that, I did pitch Safe Red Panda to her. And she said the keepers were on board and actually very interested. And they said, obviously the zoo has to be on board. So the next step would be to take the conversation through the conservation science team. And the best person to talk to on the conservation science team would be a woman named Dr. Diana Kester. And I immediately was like, oh my gosh, shut up. Are you kidding me? I literally was just hanging out with her. We got dinner on Sunday night and we're friends. I interviewed her for the podcast. Like, this is absolutely amazing. The person I had just interviewed was now the person I needed to talk to about Safe Red Panda. So when I went back to her office to get my stuff, I pitched Safe Red Panda to her, and Diana was super interested, and we talked details, and she told me that the next step would be for me to send her the paperwork and different things that we send out in these situations, and she would pass it on to her boss, Kristen Lucas. Which is another name that you might recognize because she was on here as a guest during the Celebration of Safe programs, as she is one of the people in charge of the Safe Gorilla program. So it is the absolutely smallest world. I love so much that I knew everyone involved with this process, and I went into it not realizing that I knew anyone involved with it. I just figured that showing up with my charm and Safe Red Panda stickers would get the job done. And I'm sure that helps too, but I also think it helps that I have these relationships with people. And so, yeah, really excited that it went that way. I don't know if Cleveland Metro Parks Zoo is going to be joining the program or not. We're still working through that. But you know, at least we took a step in the direction I wanted to go in. We took like 3 steps, and all of them were based on knowing people through the podcast and life and stuff. So I just think that is really cool and special, and such a great reminder of how, even though there are so many people that work in this field, it is also kind of the smallest world. And other than that, I've been hitting up the Buffalo Zoo regularly, and I've been starting back with a regular schedule at Aquarium of Niagara. So I'm still there with the fish and invertebrates team, and got to help with the feeding of Squirt, our sea turtle, who I just love recently, and things have been good. So yeah, that's really all I have to say from my own life. But you know, I appreciate y'all being here, listening, caring about all this stuff. Yeah, let's get to it. All right, so we don't have a headline story for this week. We'll be doing a couple of small deep dives a little bit later on. But we'll start off with our births, and we only have a few this week. A litter of 4 cheetah cubs have been born at the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute to 5-year-old mother Amabala. The cubs were not legally allowed to be born until the shutdown ended, so I'm pretty glad we got that behind us. I kid. But while these cubs were born at the Front Royal campus, meaning the public won't be able to visit them, they are available to be seen on a Cheetah Cub Cam live feed on the zoo's website. And if you watch, you won't be the only one doing so, because keepers are staying hands off because mom's doing such a great job. So they're also using the feed to make sure everything is okay with the cubs. The family seems to be doing quite well, with all of the cubs hitting early milestones perfectly. This is an incredible birth, as not only are all cheetahs important, but this is the 20th litter of cheetah cubs born at the Front Royal campus in Virginia. So congrats to the team at the Smithsonian National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute. You actually heard from 2 different team members on the carnivore team there, and so they are some of the people celebrating these amazing cubs. The ABQ BioPark has announced the hatching of a Gen 2 penguin chick to Digit and Killian, who are second-time parents. The 2 are doing a great job taking care of the little one, and there is a chance to see it at the zoo, though it is unlikely, as the parents take turns keeping the chick under them to keep it warm. The care staff there is giving extra support and diet to the parents, who feed the chick by regurgitating partially digested food directly into its mouth. So, hope you're not eating your breakfast as you hear that. And then last but not least in births, the Philadelphia Zoo has announced the birth of pied tamarin twins, the second pair born recently at the zoo. The little ones can be seen at the Rare Animal Conservation Center at the front of the zoo, where they will mostly be seen riding on Dad's back. And that brings us to our deaths for the week. Our friends at Tanganyika Wildlife Park have said goodbye to Oscar, a beloved sloth I got to spend time with while I was there. Oscar developed severe anemia, which could lead to complete organ failure, so the team decided to euthanize him rather than having him go through all of that suffering. A necropsy will be completed in the hopes of giving answers to the team as to why the anemia developed. Oscar was a huge, though slow, personality, and one that the team loved to share with guests, so I know that they are mourning this loss very deeply, and I am sending all my love to the team. The Philadelphia Zoo has said goodbye to Tajiri, the African lioness. A decrease in appetite led to a veterinary examination that showed an aggressive form of cancer had developed in the lioness. The decision was made to humanely euthanize the 15-year-old beauty, as she was considered geriatric. Lions can live up to about 14 years in the wild, and in zoos they live anywhere from 15 to 20 years, showing that Tajiri did live a nice long life at the zoo, but also passed away at an age where her keepers were probably hoping to get a few more years out of her. So, aggressive cancers are always a challenge in life, in animals, humans, whatever. But yeah, I feel for that team because that was just a beautiful, very well-loved lioness. Mari, a South African penguin who called Cameron Park Zoo home, has passed away. He was 31 years, 8 months old, making him one of the oldest penguins in the AZA. Hatched at the Marineland Zoo in Baltimore, he spent time at the Fort Worth Zoo before heading to Cameron Park, where he became an absolute legend. The zoo has also said goodbye to Gulliver, the North American river otter. He was found as an orphaned pup, and after being saved and rehabilitated, he found his forever home at Cameron Park Zoo. He was estimated to be 16 years old, and it's awesome that he got to have such a long and loved life when he almost didn't make it out of his earliest stages. Grateful to the zoo for doing things like that. Moonpie, a 7-year-old male red wolf that lived at Miller Park Zoo, has passed away. He was a curious wolf who was always inspecting humans, whether guest or keeper, and was known for having a very laid-back personality. His partner, Magnolia, arrived at the zoo in 2024, and the zoo is working with the Red Wolf SSP to find a new partner for her. Every red wolf lost in human care or, of course, in the wild is such a challenge because they are so near extinction in the wild. So very, very sad to hear about Moonpie. And then last but not least in this section this week, Cruz, a beloved 13-year-old mountain lion who called the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum home, was euthanized recently due to declining health. Cruz was a rescue who called the facility home since 2013 and had a sweet and playful nature that made him a fan favorite amongst keepers and guests alike. The facility is devastated at the loss. Honestly, I can say I have rarely seen such an amazing outpouring of grief and shared memories and just love as I saw on the social posts announcing his passing, which is pretty incredible. I mean, what a legacy to leave behind. And then moving on from our deaths, we get to the rest of our Zoo News section. Last week, the Indianapolis Zoo had quite the scare as a female chimpanzee was seen outside her exhibit. The zoo was immediately locked down and all guests were escorted to secure locations. Staff was able to dart the chimp with a sedative and quickly returned her to her habitat. No one, human or animal, was harmed during the event, and operations returned to normal just a few hours after the escape ended. And while it's super scary, obviously, and I'm sure that the zoo is looking in minute detail into every aspect of what happened, this is what zoos train for all the time. It's always a little silly to watch those videos that many zoos put out from time to time showing staff dressed up in like animal onesies and simulating an escape. But those drills really do help staff to prepare for moments like this, and they go through it and they take it seriously. I'm incredibly impressed that the team at the zoo handled this so well and turned what could have been a tragic situation into a, crazy story, but nothing else. A federal judge has approved the sale of Marineland Dolphin Adventure Park in Florida to number one Apex Association LLC, which is owned by John and Barbara Rubel. The two are not experts in the field at all. They come from a real estate and finance background, but their purchase was made to keep the park operational and all staff on hand. The marine mammal team is being led by Jack Kasowitz, who is a marine mammal expert with a long history of studying dolphin communications and so much more, and Felicia Cook, who is a former Marineland manager. Now, I do have some concerns here. So Jack's wife, Donna, is on the board of the Dolphin Company, the organization that owned the park and let it fall to shambles, which is obviously a huge concern. And Felicia Cook left her job at Marineland last year after realizing how bad the finances of the Dolphin Company were. This just kind of makes me worry because that means Felicia was a manager at the park, as a lot of the bad stuff that happened went on. Now, look, that doesn't mean that she was directly responsible for any of it or that she wasn't in there fighting for the animals and for the right thing to be done. I honestly don't know. And I will say that in the research I did, I couldn't find an easy answer to whether or not she was kind of going along with the parent company treating things poorly or trying to fight. And I will say that other than the thing about his wife, the only negative things I found about Jack anywhere that I looked came from sources with very obvious empty the tank agendas that I wouldn't trust at all. So there is reason to be hopeful that Marineland will clean up its act, but it is I like to call myself a realist. My wife tells me that I am an optimist, and let's just say that I am cautiously optimistic about this one, but it's not, I don't know. I don't know what to think about this yet. Marineland has had a lot of issues, but here's hoping that this is for the best, and obviously we'll be keeping an eye on it. The Tulsa Zoo has officially opened the final piece of a 17-acre Asian elephant habitat. This is the latest example of a zoo that had to make a decision about whether to move away from elephants or to commit a serious amount of resources and do big construction and stuff to make sure that the animals have what they need for an amazing life in human care moving forward. And Tulsa has chosen to go with the provide an amazing life plan. I keep saying it on here, but more and more it seems like zoos understand that elephants need a lot of room and a lot of kind of better areas than many zoos had. So you're going to continue to see zoos either commit to huge new habitats for their elephants like Tulsa, the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, Cincinnati, Columbus have all done, or to move on from the species entirely like Hogle Zoo, Buffalo Zoo, and many others, especially the smaller zoos that had elephants have chosen to do. So definitely interesting to look at that, but I get excited whenever I see a place like Tulsa opening up a big area for their elephants. I think that's going to be really cool, and I'm excited that it's there now. A whole bunch of zoos, including Akron Zoo, Detroit Zoo, Animal Kingdom, St. Louis Zoo, Sedgwick County Zoo, Woodland Park Zoo, and multiple zoos in the United Kingdom, have teamed up to raise and release Partula snails into French Polynesia every year. And this year, they had their biggest release yet, with over 7,000 of the snails being introduced to help save the various snail species that are involved in Partula snails here. So over the last 10 years, the program has seen the release of almost 40,000 snails. And this year was not only the biggest release yet, but also featured a really exciting moment when the team discovered an unmarked juvenile Partula snail, the first wild-born member of this snail type to be spotted in over 30 years. The little one serves as proof that the reintroduction program isn't just working to get the animals back out there, but is also seeing successful breeding amongst the animals in the wild, which is obviously a huge milestone for any reintroduction program. And then last but not least, in the Zoo News segment this week, Cameron Park Zoo is celebrating the pregnancy of an orangutan, just like many humans do, with a baby registry. They have the registry set up online at Target, and you can follow the link on their social media pages to buy gifts for their upcoming baby shower. So if you want to help Cameron Park Zoo out with their baby shower, you can go ahead and do that. And that brings us to... Stereotypical podcast theme song. Here to bring you to conservation news. All right, so I often say that the biggest thing needed to get people involved in animal conservation is for them to be able to see the effects of losing animals on their own lives. Whether it's the proliferation of white-tailed deer in the Northeast, where cougars were wiped out, and the effect that has had on car insurance prices, or the profits of a company taking a dive because of the loss of a species. For most humans who aren't as obsessed with animals as I am, and as all of you are if you're listening, the only way to get them to notice is for them to see the effects on their own lives. Let's face it, we are a very stuck-up species. But now we're seeing that in a super interesting way as mosquito-borne malaria has been on the rise as much as a 5-fold increase in the number of cases in Central America in areas where frog species have declined. This increase is linked directly to a lack of tadpoles, which eat mosquito larvae as staples in their diet. With more mosquitoes hatching, more malaria is spreading, and it's having a major impact on local human populations. This study was done as there has been an increase in the collaboration between ecologists and economists that are trying to calculate the cost of species declining to better illustrate to humans how important it is to preserve species, even the ones we might not think of as important, like various frog species. And it's also a huge illustration of the One Health approach to conservation and to medicine that the industry has been shifting towards over recent years, which focuses on the connection between human health and ecological health. And speaking of One Health, a new study about rats and bats has some potential ramifications in that area as well. Brown rats have been spotted in 2 different locations in Germany hunting bats. Rats hunting bats. Craziness. The rats use 2 different techniques for their hunting. Some sneak up on bats that are resting on the ground, but others literally stand on their hind legs and snatch the bats out of the air, killing them with a single bite. The photos and videos of this are nothing short of astonishing, and this serves to show how brilliant rats are and how adaptable they are to food sources, even flying ones. The rats will actually gather in lower areas where the bats have to fly through an area or fly back into where they're staying so that they are as low to the ground as possible, and then they can just pop up and grab them. And that's very cool. And the story is cool. The graphics are impressive, all of that. It's neat to see that kind of thing. There is that pesky One Health issue I mentioned, however. Bats and rats are both carriers of diseases that can have huge effects on the human population. And when rats commingle with bats in this way, there is a sharing of pathogens, which can then evolve to new diseases, and some of those might affect humans, as well as hurt the bat and rat populations and other animals. So add to this the fact that brown rats are an invasive species in the areas of Germany that this behavior is being documented in, and there are just a lot of concerns around this story, despite the fact that it's, also really cool that rats are smart in doing that. A critically endangered eastern black rhino calf has been born in Kenya, which is always great news. This is a particularly important birth, however, as the baby is part of a subgroup of Kenyan rhinos that is trying to repopulate after being nearly wiped out from the region. Camera traps show that the baby is doing well and is hanging out with mom, exactly what you would hope to see. The lands this subgroup live on are incredibly well protected at the moment, so hopefully the little one has a long future ahead of it. NOAA Fisheries recently celebrated the completion of the world's largest oyster restoration project, and it took place in the Chesapeake Bay, a place near and dear to my heart. 1,900 acres of reefs were restored in the bay, an area twice the size of Central Park. Over 7.5 million oysters were planted during the project, which ran for 11 years. The oysters are thriving, which is not only great for the species, but also for the 20,000 pounds of nitrogen removed from the water by them every year, and for the local economy, as blue crab and fishing harvests will be way up thanks to the restoration of these oysters and the natural restoration work that they do to the areas that they are in. And then on the other side of things in our waters, a recent study of the dolphins in Florida's Indian River Lagoon have shown older dolphins showing symptoms that are similar to Alzheimer's disease. The dolphins, which have been naturally exposed to dangerous algal blooms, and when I say naturally exposed, I mean it happened in the wild, not as part of scientific testing or whatever, have seen high levels of toxins in their brains that present very similarly to Alzheimer's in humans. Warming water and nutrient pollution are the main causes of the algal blooms, meaning that human-made climate change is literally the cause of this problem. We are giving dolphins Alzheimer's disease, and that just sucks. And then last but not least, in conservation news, scientists recently combined the DNA of a cheetah with the DNA of a crab. As you can imagine, things went sideways really fast. Sorry, I had to end on a joke. In other news. All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
Please join me for the Nature Disturbed podcast, a podcast about the good, the offensive, and the confusing parts of the animal kingdom, from the sewers of Florida searching for alligators. Oh no, did I forget to put the bins out? To the surface of Mars, investigating the possibility of life beyond Earth. Sorry, I had some bubbles lodged in my throat. I said, to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, all while interviewing scientists about their research along the way. Do you like comedy, whimsical storytelling, and learning about the natural world? If not, then you'll hate the Nature Disturbed podcast.
Researchers are claiming that shouting is more effective than speaking when trying to scare off seagulls. The gulls would leave when the person in question spoke or shouted the words, "No, stay away, that's my food," but they were more panicked and flew away when the words were shouted. Given that the words were equally successful in getting rid of the birds, I question whether it's correct to say that it is more effective to shout. Shouting simply gets a bigger reaction from the birds. But either way, I find it quite amusing that it took researchers to figure out that yelling like crazy at an animal with a fight or flight response that is very focused on the flight side of things would be more effective than just talking to them nicely. It's like a research grant that people could have spent on Anyway, I kid. I'm sure it was very important. Yay, science. The largest male great white shark ever recorded, known as Contender, which is weird because a contender is like the one who might take down the champion, but anyway, that's weird to me, but I digress. Contender is on the move, showing up in New Jersey after being seen off the Florida-Georgia coastline earlier this year. The shark is 13 feet long and weighs 1,653 pounds. And I guess the fact that he has moved on to New Jersey shows that even though this may be a large shark, it's not one that necessarily has good taste. Because Jersey. So, one of the recurring themes of other news lately, and honestly, the whole Zoo News episodes in general lately, has been talking about things that are getting shared that are fake. They could be AI creations or even just misinterpretations of what's being seen or data being presented. So this week, I'm going to end this section by discussing two stories that fit that bill, one a little bit more than the other one. So we're going to start off talking about raccoons. There are a bunch of posts that have gone viral around the internet saying that a new study is showing that raccoons in urban areas are showing signs of domestication. The headlines are anywhere from, quote, "Raccoons may be becoming domesticated due to humans," end quote, all the way through to the absolutely absurd ones like, quote, "Great news for people who dream of a pet raccoon. That may be possible sooner than you think," exclamation point, end quote. So here's the deal. A new study has shown that raccoons are showing slightly shorter snouts. That's it. That's the whole change that scientists have documented. And it's actually not uncommon for animals in urban areas to evolve in ways that make them cuter. Honestly, to make them more similar looking to human babies than before, as animals that are traditionally deemed cute by people tend to outlive the ones that aren't as cute, even like amongst one species like raccoons. So the human perceived cuteness ends up being passed on from generation to generation. So things like big eyes, shorter snouts, which are closer to a baby's nose, and anything else that makes animals seem adorable to the general public, and specifically like a baby, is likely to be passed on. Now, the argument could be made that this is possibly the very, very, very early start of a new species of raccoon, diverging from the other ones, that has evolved traits that seem more like domestication. But like, y'all are not going to PetSmart this year and getting a pet raccoon for Christmas or Hanukkah. I mean, you shouldn't be anyway, because they are not domesticated. And then there is this last story of the week, which is another viral one, and which I actually find fascinating on its own, but it does lead to another discussion about whether or not the story is being sensationalized. So for those of you who haven't seen it yet, there's a story about two different female wolves in British Columbia who have been seen pulling crab traps that were set by humans out of the water, ripping the netting, eating some crabs, and wandering off full and happy. This has happened. It's awesome. It's documented. It's not AI. Very cool stuff. There are two different videos of wolves doing this, about a year apart, and the people who set the traps mentioned that they were finding many damaged traps before the first video, which is why they set up the camera traps in the first place. They were trying to figure out if it was sea lions or walruses or humans or what was going on, and it turned out it was a wolf. And yeah, so that's very cool. But again, where the internet comes in here is that it has been filled with people saying that this is proof that wolves use tools, something that has only been documented in species like humans, non-human primates, crows, elephants, dolphins, a few others. But it's a small list. And so it begets the question, is this an example of wolves using tools? And again, a lot of the things online are like all caps, wolves using tools, first evidence ever, woo. I made that one up, but you get the idea. So is this tool usage? Well, that's actually super debatable. Tool usage is often, though not always, defined by scientists as not simply using an external object to achieve a goal, but intentionally manipulating it in some way. So a great example is a primate that takes a stick and bends it and then reaches it into a hole. It breaks off the stick. It makes it a stick rather than just part of the tree. And then it bends it and it reaches into a hole and it gets, some insects or something in the hole, right? That is tool usage. In other words, just pulling on the rope doesn't constitute tool usage, at least under that definition. And to me, it's like a feeder puzzle that we might give our dogs and cats at home, or even to animals in zoos and aquariums. On some of those feeders, they have to move things to get to the food, but that isn't considered tool usage. So in this case, the wolves either saw people pulling the traps out of the water and understood that food was available at the other end of the ropes, or maybe they smelled the food in the trap and pulled the rope to bring it closer, or they were simply, honestly, they're basically dogs, right? Maybe they were just being playful with a rope the first time and they ended up getting a meal out of it and then learned from that. So it's very cool and it's very smart, and we know that wolves are smart, and I love wolves, but it's hard to call this true tool usage. So while it is an incredibly cool story, the headlines really do need to calm down with crediting wolves with tool usage, which is debatable at best, and definitely stop it with raccoon domestication, which is really not what we are seeing at this time.
Oh, animal, animal holidays. Animal holidays. Hey!
All right, and it is November, which is Manatee Awareness Month, and we're getting to that point where most of these weeks don't have that many animal holidays. So for this week, we've got World Fisheries Day on the 21st, and then the 24th is both Evolution Day and Walrus Day. And that is it for your animal holidays for the week. All right, so there you have it, folks. Another episode of Rossifari Zoo News. I hope that this one brought you some Zoy. In case you forget, I may have stumbled and said Zoy instead of joy last week, and instead of admitting that I stumbled, have decided that is the joy that you get from going to a zoo or aquarium. So I'm sticking with the Zoy. I like it a lot. But yeah, I hope this episode brought you some Zoy. And you know who brings me Zoy? All of you for listening, and especially my patrons, and especially my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, Melissa Reed, Carrie Kirkpatrick, John Lewis, who is also here for stickers, Kevin Williams, and Cormac McMuffin. Meow. And speaking of those stickers, If you are one of the people who is at the Binturong or Red Panda level and you get those stickers, they are being sent today as you listen to this. And this month, they are a Matchie's tree kangaroo and a Joey inspired by Judy and her Joey at the Lincoln Children's Zoo that you got to see so many pictures of videos and all that stuff from me. And also that you heard about on the Tree Kangaroo Workshop recap episode. So that's exciting. I would like to take a moment to say thank you to everyone who sent me stories this week, including Anya Keene, Colleen Linehan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbook, Dr. Natalie Taco, Sam Evans, Dr. Laura Shank, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky, Kevin Williams, Holly Page, Jay Meredith, Dr. Zoe Rossi, Barbara Bennett, Ken Tryon, Sam Evans, whose name I already said, but whatever, Ann Yoshioka, Alexa Lopez, Marianne Rossi. Thank you all so much for contributing to this week's episode. We'll be back on Tuesday with a brand new interview episode, and until then, remember, friends, the words Newsy credits backwards are Steiderk Yiswen.
The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.
This study was actually done because there has been an increased tapu.